I'm back today with another episode of Off the Shelf. In today's video, we're taking a look at a really collectible item called the Manual of Aurania, way back in 1977. Please stick around. I'm AZ Mountaineer, and this is our channel, Old School Rules, where we celebrate the community of old school gamers and grognards who like classic RPGs, miniatures, magazines, and everything that goes with it. In these off-the-shelf videos, I'm taking an item from my collection to share with the community. Whether this is something you've never heard of before or something you just don't have in your personal collection, I hope today's video gives you a chance to understand a little bit more what this item is all about. Hope you enjoyed the video. Today, we're taking a trip all the way back to 1977, and we're going to take a look at this item. It's called the Manual of Aurania. It's 8.5 by 11 paper, just stapled along the edge, and they photocopied it on both sides. You can tell from even just looking at it, this was made using a photocopy machine. There are two versions of this. Mine is a second printing, and I'll show you what the covers of both of those look like here in just a second. Here's the introduction. I think it's worth a quick read. They say, while playing many games of D&D at Arrow Hobbies, we came up with many types of new monsters, characters, and treasures. Many of these have been forgotten, perhaps deservedly so. Several were outright stolen and soon appeared in print. There's got to be more interesting story to that I don't know. I'm not sure what of theirs was stolen by whom and where it showed up. But anyway, I thought that was an interesting piece from the introduction. Then they go on to say, to prevent this from happening again, we began a collection of these figments of our imagination, and the selection of the best stuff is collected here for your use and hopefully your pleasure. To give you some idea of where these ideas came from, Aurania is a universe of around 10 or so dungeons, of which only 3 are commonly used, and even more players. Aurania, by the by, means place of gold, a reference to the large piles of the stuff collected by the player characters in our early campaigns. Our particular interpretations of the rules are rather different, but this has been written to conform to most systems. Feel free to change or modify to fit your own system. You're going to anyway, so we might as well say you can. After the response to our first edition and the welcome it received, and after much long debate on how this manual should be presented, we bring you this edition for your own enjoyment. It contains the same material as the first edition, with the addition of some superb illustrations by Miss Troy L. Hughes and Miss Aimee Karklyn. Okay, all right, so let's dive into it. Here's my cover. You'll see it notes on here, Hugh Singh, Daniel Wagner, and Larry Stehle. I think I'm saying that correctly. On the acknowledgement page, it indicates that Hugh was the editor-in-chief. Daniel, which there it's spelled the traditional way, D-A-N-I-E-L, was the, quote, main contributor, and Larry Stehle was responsible for typing and contributions. They also give thanks to Gary Switzer, Dale Doan, and Aimee Karklyn. Not clear what they did in addition, other than Aimee obviously did some illustrations. Here's what the first cover looks like, right? Similar, but they don't make it really look like a book, right? You see, like this one's supposed to design to look like a book. It says second edition and $3 down at the bottom left on the front. This version's based as the same text, but the artwork is not there and the price is not there, and obviously it does not say second edition. When you open this second edition up, that's the front and the back cover, you can see how they've got it made here so it looks a little bit more like a book. Okay, so the details. The Manual of Aurania comes from 1977. I've already mentioned the principal parties responsible. According to notes I found, there's an advertisement for the original edition in Alarms and Excursions in 1976, and it lists the price for that first edition as being $2.50. That's where I got that. And of course mine on the cover says $3. It also says the original was 24 pages. Mine, I just hand counted, is 34 pages, including some blank pages. And as noted, these two individuals are given artist credit or illustration credit for the book. They don't have a table of contents, but I've made one here for you. It's basically a one-page introduction about and acknowledgments of who's responsible, some character classes, one page on reincarnation charts, and then some monsters. So they mention in the text, if you were paying attention, that they also had a bunch of treasures, or I would assume that means magical items, but there aren't any in this book. And here you'll see again the names that I mentioned of who was responsible, right? Hugh, Daniel, and Larry are on the cover. Gary Switzer gets Gary Switzer gets credit in the book, as does Dale Doan, and then Aimee and Troy also given credit inside the book. So let's talk a little bit about what's in here, and then at the end I'll show you all the illustrations at one time. They've got these clerics, the cleric of Mitra, Asgard, Thor, and Odin. These are all Norse themed, right? I believe. And so what they do is they give you some sort of modifications to the cleric. Like the cleric of Mitra, they say they use the normal 1,500 experience points per level table. They can wear any armor, only use blunt weapons. The curing wound spells only work on certain types of characters. For example, they won't work on elves as well as some of the other classes / races that they have in here. Bless only works on believers, men and hobbits only. Raise Dead only works on men, hobbits, and dwarves, etc. The clerics of Asgard, they say there's 2 types here. They don't get a +1 on their curing spells. These things only work on, there are other spells like Cure Disease, Bless, Raise Dead, only work on lawful characters. And they won't work on the Mitra or Mithrites, Dites as they call them. In all these, they talk about what their Sticks to Snakes spell does. The Mitra folks, it turns snakes to sticks. Here, it actually animates an oak tree. That's the spell they get, so it like literally can move and come with you. And then this was an interesting one. The clerics of Asgard, which are the cleric of Thor and Odin, can't turn undead. So there's no thing where they roll to turn undead, but it says that if they might turn a type of undead, then that creature will not attack them unless it absolutely has no choice but to attack them to get away. So basically it will just like try and stay away from them. And the Ghoul's Touch does not paralyze them, and the Wight and Wraith's Touch does not drain a level. So I'd be thinking seriously about choosing the cleric of Asgard if I was in their campaign. The cleric of Thor levels up like normally. They're limited. Only quarterstaffs, hammers, and scythes can be used as weapons. They can wear armor, but they have to wear robes over top of it for whatever reason. Seems like a fashion statement to me. The cleric of Odin goes up at 2,500 experience points per level. They say like a magic user. They can't wear any armor, and you'll see why in a second. They can only use daggers, scythes, and staffs as weapons, and they get magic user spells for every cleric spell. So you use the cleric spell table, but then you also give them magic user spells of the same number and the same level. So they're basically dual classed cleric magic users. Okay, the next thing they have, and I'll speed up here a little bit, go through these. The Bornings, like Bjorn from the Tolkien novel, right? And like I said, they're not truly a werebear because they can be hit by any weapons, but they can change into that animal shape. They obviously have better hit dice than a lot of folks. Their armor class naturally gets better, and they have some limitations on who could be their hirelings and so forth. The next one is a myth from Ireland. When I looked it up on the internet, they said you pronounce this Sai, and there's another word that's sometimes interchangeable for this. But in any event, this is an Irish elf fairy type creature. They have spells as if a magic user 1 level below. They don't have infravision, but they gain at first level a detect invisibility spell that they can cast that allows them to see invisible objects. They fight as if they were fighting men. They get 8-sided dice for their hit points, and they get the best saving throw between fighter users and magic users on each of the types of saves. They like spears, swords, and knives. They won't wear plate mail, but they can wear anything else up to and including chainmail. And they can use any magic items except for no staff of healing. They can't, for some reason, they can't use swords with a high intelligence or ego. And then they tell you about these books that would raise your stats and levels, specifically how those would work. Next is the samurai. I like the samurai here. Everyone had some version of these guys, right? And like lots of fanzines. I do these fanzine videos. Lots of people had ideas for samurai and ninja back in the day. They carry 2 long swords and a knife and a one-handed mace and a two-handed mace. And you can see here their stats are pretty tough. 12 strength, 12 intelligence, 12 wisdom, 15 dexterity, 12 constitution, and of course, who cares about charisma? And based on their stats, like strength is 17 or above, they can use the two-handed mace. If dexterity is 17 or above, they can use 2 swords at once, which is a fantastic benefit. And they have special armor they call Lamar armor. It's basically lacquered leather. It says with bamboo or metal plates attached, and it gives them the equivalent of wearing leather and a shield. Armor class of 6, and but they can't use shields, so that's the best armor class they can get other than magical items. They have typical comments in here about their honor, that they can't be disgraced, the kind of things they'll have to do if they feel like they've been defeated or failed to be successful on a mission, and so on and so forth. They can use swords, they can use arrows, and then they have these special abilities. Their special abilities, and they have a chart with a percentage chance of what they can do. Deflecting arrows up to 2 maximum, wrestling in armor, swimming in armor, fighting 2 opponents at the same time, and there's even a chance to fight from 3 to 6 at the same time with no penalties, and then able to strike fear into the hearts of others. And they got this really elaborate way you're supposed to do that. See that. Let me find it to you. I thought it was cute, funny. All right, so if you want to try and do that, you declare yourself, you describe your heritage, your teachings, your teacher, your school, your grace, your successes, your victories, your followers, your treasurers, your love life, and how you plan to ruin your opponent's love life. You have to say all that. And then, for whatever reason, apparently the guy stays still. Then he makes a saving throw. If he fails, his saving throw, then he's infected with fear. If he makes his saving throw, then he gets to crack you a free strike, I guess, while you're blathering on and you didn't have any effect on him. So anyway, I like that one. I thought it was kind of clever. And he's got, again, there's some other things there about how much honor he will use in the campaign. Here's another one I had to look up. I'm probably not saying it correctly. The Bazadeh. It's from the country of India, or the area of today's India, and it's a body of a man with the head of a dog often. And it says here, they're very ugly. Their charisma is automatically 3. Why would you ever choose one? They have 3,000 experience points per level, by the way. Otherwise, they're like a fighting man, except for they can make food, water, or wine for yourself and up to 10 people. You can see invisible and infravision. That's your special thing. And you can talk to animals, 5% chance per level. And then additional, there's a 5% chance for every 2 levels you can actually get an animal to do something for you, assuming you can talk to them. And they say, and they will, but they like animals. They will not use them as cannon fodder. So don't think you're going to get away with that. The next character class here is the Leprechaun, which it makes me smile. So the Leprechauns, again, are, they say, like cousins to the elves and the gnomes. They fight as clerics, they save as clerics, but with a -1. I think it's an improvement of -1. They get spells like a cleric, but then they do this a couple, and they change which spells, like certain spells are at different levels in here. And then they have, the best thing they have though is their good luck and their bad luck. So their good luck they can use once per spell, and it gives them a reroll on a die. And then the curse of bad luck you can put on an opponent, and they have to re-roll every successful die roll, every save, every hit that they make, or anything else the DM decides is a good roll. You make them roll it again. It lasts for a day, and then every day you can save versus magic again until you make your save, and then it stops. So it can last for a low-level character for a really long time. They wear leather armor. They said they like to use staffs, clubs, shillelaghs to crack people in the head. And then they've got some limitations on the magic items they can use. Then they have the Shapeshifter, and this is a really interesting one, a concept I hadn't seen before. So this Shapeshifter skins with a knife, right? Creatures that have been killed, tans their hide, and then this is wears it on their body, and then they take on those characteristics and abilities. You don't get their hit dice. You stay sentient. You keep your consciousness of what you're doing, but you gain many of their abilities. You fight as if you're that monster. If you wear it for too long, you can lose yourself in the creature. So they say you got to shift what skin you're wearing between adventures. The skins can be damaged more easily by fire, and that's obviously not a good thing. And then they basically go up in levels. You can skin and tan higher hit dice monsters. The two things you can't do: you can't be an undead. If you try to skin an undead like a zombie, you'll actually become mindless like the undead. And you can't skin a troll, because this troll skin will keep regenerating itself. So other than that, you know, get out there and have fun skinning everything you kill in the dungeon. Here are the that's it for the classes. Here's the reincarnation tables. It's basically, you take your, if you're lawful or neutral, there isn't one for chaotic. You roll D100, and this is what you're going to come back as. Okay, now let's take a look at the monsters. These are some pretty fun things. The first thing we have here are the giants. We've got the Urukai, Trollheimers, sort of large relatives of the ogres, smarter and stronger, and some even use magic. The Indigons, small, 4 feet tall, 4 feet around, blue in color. Hide as tough as plate mail armor. So they're like giant types, but only 4 feet tall. The four-armed horror, obviously it's 4 arms. We'll talk about that in a minute. And they say they usually carry magical weapons in there. And then the black giants, which are cloud giants, but they live underground instead of in the clouds, but otherwise they're going to be the same. And finally, the Gru, a huge monster, humanoid in shape and extremely ugly. If you see a monster, you have to make a saving throw versus fear using dragon breath. That's the save column. You run away. Fighters get a +1, magic users get a -1, everybody else stays the normal save. But it says -5 the first time you encounter a Gru. That's everybody. And if you kill a Gru, you'll never be afraid of any other Gru again. And they have some magic resistance, and they're big, and they do a ton of damage, so you gotta look out for the Gru. And finally, the Mara, a huge humanoid creature, looks like a huge stone woman, and it can curl up and basically just look like a boulder. And then here's the artwork for the four-armed horror. I like the art here quite a bit. The next group are the trolls. Pretty straightforward. Cave trolls, wood trolls, hill trolls, mountain trolls, river trolls, I think are also known as water trolls, Grendel trolls, and they just keep getting bigger as you move up that list. And then here's the art for that one. We've got the water troll, the hill troll, and the mountain troll. They sort of all look the same except for what they're wearing, I think. And looks like maybe the water troll has some scales. The undead are, for this day and age, pretty typical things. Apparitions, nightmares, phantoms, revenant, the banshee, the fetch, the crypt keeper, the spriggan. They say that this is a creature that's found in stones, hedges, magic circles, and dungeons, basically ghost giants. And they have the hit dice of giants. They hit like, they damage like giants. And then ghosts. And so these were just their versions of those back in the day. Nothing particularly exciting about those. The dragons, mottled dragon, which is a cross between a wyvern and a dragon. The purple dragon, which I like, and this is what I like at the purple dragon. So his breath weapon smells like lotus and puts you to sleep. That's the consequence. He's very, calm dragon. The Perytons, which is the mythology creature, cross between a manicore. They say cross between a wyvern and a manicore. Casts a shadow, looks like a human. That's in the original AD&D monster manual. A version of that. The Crimson, which is one. They have 2 different types of large red dragons. The Crimson is one of them, and they call then they have the 3-headed horror, which has I would say green because it breathes chlorine gas, a black because it breathes acid, and then the middle head just has poison fangs. So I don't know what color I might make that one. Maybe gray, who knows. Then we have the dragon worm. Looks like a huge flying snake. It has a poisonous breath weapon, and it likes to coil up and constrict you. And then we have the ice worm. Larger than even a purple worm. This is the obviously a giant worm that lives up in the ice area. And finally, the rack, the other type of super large red dragon. This one regenerates like a troll. It has to be destroyed just like a troll. And then, other than that, basically, this is like a giant red dragon. And then here's the art for this one. We've got just this big dragon laying down asleep, and we've got this lady here who's being his friend, I guess, keeping him calm or whatever. Then we have demons, fairly straightforward. Imps, salamanders, and then 3 dragons, the class CBA, and they get stronger. Class C, then Class B, then Class A. They have swords and whips, and they have magic resistance and spell powers and things like that. And then finally they have what they call name demons, and you make up the name, but this would be the most powerful type of demons you could have in your campaign. They say never more than 1 per dungeon. That still seems like a lot to me. And then we have some artwork here. This is just like a giant demon's foot, and the little tiny imp, which is like a fire creature here. And I don't know if he's tickling his toe or what exactly it is he's doing. And finally, we have the weird trips and ripoffs. So just everything else, right? I'll give you some details about some of these. The Argo Pelters, a squirrel-like animal that's a nuisance, likes to throw rocks and sticks and stuff at people that come by. The Flitter Bricks, which are flying squirrels, and they like to slam into things, which kills them. And an explosion for a 6-sided die of damage when they explode. The Jub Jub Bird, glowing eyes, potentially speaks to people, may give you advice, maybe true, maybe not true. Runners look like piranhas with legs, and they come in, they bite you with their jaws, and they basically won't let go. Snarks, no description given, but the interesting thing is snarks are good eating. If you eat their heart, you gain 1 point to strength and constitution. But whatever they do look like, you got to be careful, because they could be something called a boojum. And a boojum is a relative. There's a 1 in 10 chance that a snark is actually a boojum. If you look at it and its eyes meet yours, saving throw versus death, and you have to get a 20 or you die. So 95% chance if you look at a boojum, it instant death. So that's probably a problem. Nasties, also called stranglers. These are invisible creatures. They like to attack from surprise, and they'll try to strangle you. That's all they say. The North Hounds project a paralysis spell on you, and they're telepathic, and they come around in packs, and they try to paralyze you and then eat you. The Tavastri is a large gargoyle with 4 arms and usually leading a group of gargoyles, so it's sort of like the king gargoyle. The Ravaging Fiends are reptilian creatures, and they have 5 hit dice, but they attack us if they have 10 for some reason. And the Catablopus, which is in the AD&D monster manual, says a scaled creature tends to look down if you ever meet its gaze, save versus death or die. At least you don't have to get a 20, right? The Fachin, no description given. They like to ambush you. That's it. That's your description. The Gyrophant, a large lobster-like creature with a hard red shell, has 27 limbs, 10 of which have pincers on the end. They can only use 4 at a time, but if you whack one off or whatever, then they can bring another one to bear on the attacks. And they have 9 to 13 eyes, and they can go in and out of our dimension. So I assume that means they can escape pretty easily. The Bandersnatch, reptilian creature in the forest, and they can breathe chlorine gas. The Casus is like a gorgon, but they breathe fire instead of a flesh to stone type of breath weapon. Fire trees, chaotic ints of a fungoid type, and they shoot I think like a giant mushroom, right? And then it shoots out flaming liquid. That's pretty crazy. The Jabberwock, another forest or dungeon-based creature. They bite, they claw. They're really fast. That's it. The Lindorm, a large reptilian worm that lives around abandoned churches. I don't know why they like churches, but they do. And they can bite you and wrap you up and try and constrict you. The Nucklavi is a centaur-like sea monster that breathes a rotting disease. Come out during storms and attack ships. The Toadstool is just a toadstool. And they have spears, so they're basically like mushroom men. And finally, the Floater, giant dandelions that launch seed pods. If the seed pods, 10 to 100 at a time, they launch all these seed pods. And if they hit you, it's a 6-sided die, -1. for every sea pod. So that's going to be massive damage. So the kind of thing where you're like, why, what is this? And they start exploding around you, and you probably hopefully run away. And finally, the Sphinx, which is going to be wherever you want it to be, and they're going to ask riddles, just like the sort of like the myth, right? And here's some artwork. This is the Nucklavi, which is the centaur of the sea, if you will. Okay, so that's it for this episode of Off the Shelf. Taking a look at the classic collectible book from 1977 called the Manual of Aurania. It is quite collectible. It's kind of hard to find. Can be a little bit on the expensive side, but I think this one is a lot of fun to read, so if you ever get a chance to get it and read through it, I'd suggest you do so. Like all these things from that era, I just really enjoy the creativity and the fact these people got together and published this, not once but twice, and then sold it or distributed it at conventions or wherever they did. We have lots of other videos on our channel. I hope you guys are subscribed. I hope if you like the content, ask your friends to give us a look. Maybe they can become subscribers as well. That's it for today, and until next time, my friends, keep rolling 20s.